Today, the weekend's here, and we have ourselves a bit of interesting developments in the whole Pete Alonso thing. Jim Duquette launches off a tweet and sets a cascade of information around the polar bear. We're going to break that down on this edition of Mets Digest. What's going on, everybody? My name is Flobo Boyce. Thank you and welcome to Mets Digest. Myself, alongside Mike D'Angelo, we work tirelessly to give you the best Mets news and notes you can use. You can do us a favor. If we're liking what we're putting out there for you, like the video, comment on the video. I read all the comments there, positive or negative and otherwise, and make sure you subscribe to the channel. Don't be part of that not subscribed crew. That 76.7%. Y'all are probably Phillies fans. Okay, let's get into it. Now, when the season was over, Pete Alonso going back to New York was kind of, I wish it happened. It seems more and more that it may actually happen, going from a pipe dream to a reality. See, there was that weekend we had about a month ago about the first baseman roulette, where almost everyone got themselves a first baseman, and teams that could benefit from Pete Alonso's power have one reason or another haven't been able to bite, whether it's the years, whether it's the personnel already there, or in the curious case of the Texas Rangers, they probably are running out of money. See the whole situation with their regional sports carrier. So that's left Pete without a home, and people were kind of thinking or wondering, if it's going to be New York, why haven't a deal have been done? So if you've been following the story, there's this whole conflict about the amount versus the years and tenure. Pete wants to be a Met for life in theory, and that comes with a long-term deal. But everyone understands that Pete chases his pitches a lot. He is declining, coming off a season and a half of declines, despite the 34-plus homers, and is kind of in a projection that he won't be able to sustain that kind of power he had in 2019, 2020, and 2021. So this morning, Jim Duquette, who's an insider, former GM, an insider over at the Sirius XM channel MLB Network Radio, which is actually one of my favorite channels. I also like Pitbull's Globalization. Okay, I'm kind of silly like that. Wrote this. He says, according to league sources, Pete Alonso's camp has offered the Mets a 3-year deal with opt-outs. Peculiar because, usually it's the team that offers a deal, but I digress. The deal is only available to the Mets right now, so that is definitely a red flag or a green flag, depending on how you look at it. No deal known to be close at the moment, and Alonso's agent, Scott Boras, declined comments. Can't go forward without mentioning the time frame. It's the second week of January. Next week, you probably will have a closer decision on other aspects of baseball, like the Sasaki sweepstakes, but you're about a month away from spring training. You got to figure out what your roster is going to be, and I do think a lot of the candidates or clients of Scott Boras who held out to the last possible moment to put themselves in a position to fail. And I think Pete Alonso is probably thinking about that as well, coupled with his declining seasons. But it's very rare that a camp just offers a special sweetheart deal where no other teams can see. That to me is kind of weird, but it's also a 3-year deal. So about a week ago, there was rumors or a confirmed report, I won't say rumors, but a 3-year, $90 million deal, which was also declined. So that makes you wonder what's happening now. Is it an issue where there's a higher AAV for this 3-year deal that we're hearing today? Or is maybe it's an admission of defeat, accepting a deal at a lesser value in exchange for those opt-outs? I think Pete Alonso, I think any young player who's go through the labyrinth, which is getting paid in MLB through your minor league contracts, through the arbitration years, you want to get paid as best as you can, even though you may have an affinity with the team. But I do think this may be either a measured loss or an absolute white flag if Scott Boras goes, okay, we'll have a short deal now with New York because we love New York so much, and try again next year as a stopgap measure. Either way, this puts pressure on Pete Alonso to, 1, perform, and 2, not get booed out of the building when he shows up for the next game. Now, I'm not a hater. Pete Alonso is currently my 4th favorite player behind my captain, Francisco Lindor, my tribal chief, Sean Manaea, and Tyrone Taylor, because he holds it down for the brothers. But if you have a Pete Alonso situation where he becomes a villain, that is something we don't want to see. So you can see the thumbnail that you clicked on today. That's Jon Heyman's face. And because Jon Heyman talked about this for New York Post Sports, it's actually the video content we just transcribed here for you about the Pete Alonso situation in response to the fallout of that Jim Duquette situation tweet that came earlier today. Jon Heyman writes, Quote, I would say that there's a good chance the Mets are going to sign Alonso. I do think he likes being a Met. There's 6 years where he hit the most home runs of anybody in the National League since he came into the league. Only Aaron Judge has hit home runs. I know he's from Tampa, but he likes New York, and I think ultimately it's a good chance. Listen, man. John Heyman, he's more of an insider than I'll ever be. I'm just a guy who loves the team. But this guy has me running around all off season like on a wild goose chase. You told me a month ago, John, that everyone wants Alonso. You told me 6 weeks ago, oh, the Cubs are looking. You told me 2 weeks ago, maybe it's the Red Sox. Now you're like, oh, I think there's going to be a good chance that the New York Mets are going to sign Pete Alonso. I don't know if this is what being an insider is. I want nothing to do with it. I mean, I don't know if you're protecting interests. I don't know what the insider information you have, but you're not telling us the whole story here. But I will say he did make a point to double and triple down that he does see Pete Alonso signing again with Queens. But boy, I tell you, people always he'll never defeat the allegations of being someone who wants to goose up a marketplace. But as I record this though, about a half an hour before that, Will Sammon over at The Athletic chimed in as well, putting everything into context. And by everything, I mean this. The Mets options for next year going forward, they are plenty. They're not ideal, but there are plenty. Pete Alonso's age, Pete Alonso's lack of or declining of skill, what the Mets need to put themselves in the promised land as far as being a world championship team. The original promise from Steve Cohen was a championship within 3 to 5 years. This is season number 5. And of course, the whole Boris cult of personality thing. So it's a fantastic article. If you have The Athletic, I recommend you read it in its entirety, but his snippet from you is from Will Sammon. He says, league sources confirmed a report from SiriusXM analyst Jim Duquette, a former New York Mets general manager, saying Alonso's camp offered the Mets a 3-year deal with opt-outs. Duquette reported the offer was only available to the Mets, which is, again, very, very odd. Like, why would you do that if you don't really feel like there's another option out there, right? Wouldn't you not? If there's 2 options, you'll probably get them the deal. The former exec added that Alonso's agent, Scott Boras, declined to comment. Of course he would. A willingness from the Alonso's camp to go short-term when a deal marks an important development. But even if such a contract length may be closer to the Mets' comfort zone, it's hard to say whether negotiations have improved without knowing the dollar figures. And that lies the rub. Is it 3 years 90? Is it 3 years 60? Is it 3 years 140? We don't know. And we won't know until that information leaks out at a later time and date. It's also possible the other teams are interested in Alonso. If they are interested, I would definitely use this new deal that you think is fair and try it with other teams to see if they will bite. But I'm just speculating at this point. So the short-term deal totally within David Stearns' wheelhouse, making sure they can swap out parts to keep a championship team running without feeling you have to blow up the team, totally makes sense. There's not anyone has been signed to a long-term deal since Stearns took the hot seat, so you're not going to get the 8-9 year deal that, unfortunately, guys like David Wright or even Brandon Nimmo got, at least for the time being, it seems. But again, someone who is so quintessentially to even reference David Wright's kind of interesting here, parallel even. Someone who really was the face of a team when they really weren't that good was Pete Alonso, if not Francisco Lindor. It was Pete Alonso really was like well, we're not good, but, old polar bear's holding it down. You know what I mean? So there is that kind of non-financial intangibles that David Stearns does not want to play with. So, 3-year deal, no terms announced of this recording, but this one seems like it's good enough for Boras and his camp to show over to the Mets and the Mets alone. If I were to infer, I would put the Mets at an advantage to sign Pete Alonso for the next season. Again, I don't think the move Mark Vientos to first is not a bad idea. I do think that's definitely, in their minds, the plan B. The plan A was to bring Pete back. You reached the end of the video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. This is a really interesting development. I want your take when it comes to this. Are you just sign the man, get him in? Are you like, hey man, I'm done with Pete. I can't stand this whole Scott Boras situation. Where do you land on the frustration scale? My name is Flobo Boyce. Myself, alongside Mike D'Angelo, work tirelessly to give you the best when it comes to Mets content. We'll be back soon enough with a brand new update. And of course, as always, it's LGM.